Hi everybody. So this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. So I've decided that we're going to pull sugar because it's an oddly satisfying technique. You feel like you've achieved something after it. And I don't know about you, but I always feel a lot better when I've learned something new or I'm trying something a little bit different. And it's all very well making sweets and they taste good, but I'm not really one for a quick fix. So I thought that this week, if we focus on a technical aspect of sweet making, you can have a go at it. And then if you're feeling a little bit stressed and kind of put down by the whole situation we're in at the moment, at least you can try something that's completely different. You'll probably only ever do it once because it's not an easy thing and you are likely to burn your fingers. But it's fun and I really hope you enjoy it because I get a lot out of it and I hope you do too. So, as part of the pulling sugar, what I decided to do is make like lemon pear drops, I think is the best way. It's kind of like sherbety lemon pear drops, because it'll show you process and we'll also have something sweet to eat afterwards. The things you're going to need for this are 450 grams of granulated sugar. You're going to need 150 mils of water, a teaspoon or a sachet of cream of tartar, a tablespoon of the glucose syrup. As I've said before, you can buy Dr. Oetker's from the supermarket. Costs you about £1.40 a tube, which is why I buy in bulk, but it's the same thing. Because I'm doing a lemon flavouring, we're going to have some lemon extract and some yellow food colouring. You could do like mint flavour for this. It's a strawberry flavour, whatever you want really, but I'm choosing lemon today just to give it a nice colour. Equipment, obviously the usual trusty pan and wooden spoon. We're also going to need our thermometer because we're going up to soft crack stage today. A tablespoon for measuring out the glucose syrup, but to be honest I'm probably going to use the metal one because it's easier to get it off the spoon. It's totally up to you. And possibly the most important piece of equipment for this, or for any kind of sugar pulling, is a silicone mat. Okay, so you can buy these online retailers like Amazon sells them like packs quite cheaply for under a tenner, and you get multiple ones. I've got 2 out, you'll see why later. Do not buy cheap. I have bought cheap, and anyone who's been in my class before, especially the first time we did this, will tell you that if you buy cheap, it melts the plastic. It's not worth it. You have to start all over again. So please, please buy proper silicone mats. The sugar is really, really hot and you're going to need to use that. Besides those things, obviously we're going to use the usual measuring jug and some weighing scales just to weigh out your sugar. Okay, so as with most of our recipes, everything's going to go into the pan at once. So I've measured out and poured in the 450 grams of sugar. I'm going to put in a sprinkling of the cream of tartar. Not very much, there's usually about 5 grams in here, not a lot. I'm going to put the 150 mils of water. And we're going to put the tablespoon of liquid glucose. So about that much. And then we're going to put it on a nice low heat to melt that sugar down. Now, as I say with all sweets, you can stir the mixture while you're melting the sugar, but as soon as it's all dissolved and you start to bring it to the boil, you need to stop stirring. When you first put it in, it's going to look a bit like that, and it'll slowly become a liquid as the sugar melts down. So today we're aiming off for 143 degrees, which is the top end of soft crack stage. Any more than that and you go into the hard crack stage, which is like your Blackpool rock. This one's ever so slightly less tough, I think, for want of a better description. When we get to the 143 degrees, that's when we're going to add the flavourings and the colours. But in the meantime, I'm just waiting for this sugar to melt, and then it'll take about 20 minutes to get to the actual temperature that we're looking for. So as you can see, we've now melted all that sugar, and I'm going to turn up the heat so that we can start to bring it to the boil. Another thing you can do to kind of make your sweets as smooth as possible, which is always the goal, is you could get a pastry brush. I have a silicone one, which I really like. Cold water, and as I've done in a previous thing, go around the edge of your pan to get all this excess sugar, to make sure that as your sugar rises, you don't have any grainy sugar bits that are stuck in. So let's see if I can show you that. Just around the edge like that, so that the water melts the sugar down into your syrup. Work your way all the way around the pan, and then that way, as the sugar rises, it will be as smooth as it possibly can be. So when I usually do this in class, I tend to do the rhubarb and custard mix, which involves 2 different flavours. So that's easier to do if you've got 2 people, because you take half the syrup out, flavour it, and then the other person works on the other half, and then that way, as it cools down, you're working on the same part together. The reason why I'm doing a 1 flavour lemon pear drop today is because there's only one of me, and I don't have heating lamps. If you want to try something that's a 2 flavour, or later on, say you want to build up to doing like Blackpool Rock, it's worth either having kind of like a heat lamp at home that can keep your mixture at a certain temperature so it doesn't go too hard and you can still work with it, or do it with multiple people, because it makes it so much easier. Now reached your 143 degrees, and I've turned it off the heat. I'm just going to add some silicone lemon flavouring and some yellow food colouring, just a dash, and then just give it a little stir just so that that mixes in to the whole thing. And this becomes, like, if you like, the most dangerous part of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to explain this to you and then I'll show you afterwards. I'm going to pour this boiling hot sugar onto the silicone mat, and then I'm going to try and angle the camera so you can see what I'm doing in order to pull the sugar. I'm just leaving it for a second because you want it to cool a little bit. The trick at this point is you don't want to touch it too soon, but you also don't want it to cool down too much because it stops being malleable then. So what we're aiming for is that kind of happy medium where it still can be moved and moulded, but it's not going to burn your fingers. Just going to tip out the sugar into the centre of my mat. You can see the steam coming up in. And what you're going to do to start pulling it is you move it together like this. So you don't want to touch this with your fingers at all. I cannot stress to you how much this is hot, and it will burn quite badly, and it'll also stick to your fingers and burn quite badly. So I'm just adding some more on top of that. It will bind. I think I've just, ow, like that. Ow, 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 careful, careful, careful. So, as you can see, I'm constantly moving it inside and I'm not touching it with my hands at all. And as you fold it in, it's sticking. Like that. I've just kept the rest of the mixture on a very low heat to try and retain it so that I can show you this more than once. But can you see how it's sticking in like that? And this is what you're going to keep doing as it cools. Now it's stopped rolling around a little bit now, so I'm just going to stop messing with it. You can use two to do this, so if you wanted to, you could heat that flat and you could use the other silicone mat to make the problems, make the sugar bind. But it's whatever easiest way you use to do it. If you're going to wear gloves, always make sure they're silicone, because latex gloves will melt while you wear them. And usual food gloves will melt while you wear them, and what's worse is the sugar will stick to the plastic of your gloves, which will then burn through and stick to your fingers, and you will burn yourself. I tell you this not because I think you're an idiot and you'll do that, but because I am an idiot and I have burned myself doing it that exact way, which is why I cannot stress to you enough how important it is to use the silicone. And we're just going to keep doing that until it'll come to a point where you can actually touch the sugar, because it'll have cooled down enough that you can pull it, but still be warm enough to work with. Okay, so yeah, you can see how it's got pull to it. Like that. So here you can see me working with the sugar. It's cooled down quite a lot, and you just bringing it together. Oh, that's warm. And flipping it over, binding it, rolling it, and basically working the sugar. And this is all that pulling involves, really. It's just constant movement. Ow, still warm. If you're pushing it together, you'll find hot spots. I suggest you use the silicone mat for that, because it gets really, really warm. But this is all that pulling sugar really is. It's just a case of working the sugar and joining it together. And to be honest, this is the bit I really enjoy doing. You know, once you've done the boiling and the moving and things like that, this is my favourite part. Just be really careful because it is still really hot. Some people can't do this at all with without some silicone gloves, and they have to be silicone gloves. Don't use cheap plastic ones or normal latex gloves, because they'll melt and then the sugar will stick to them, and then that will stick to your finger, and then you will get burns like I've had. So please be careful of that. So I can feel that this sugar is like starting to cool down now, and once it gets to a certain point you can't work with it anymore. So that's when you start cutting and moulding it however you want it to. So I'm just going to roll that out a little bit more. So if I take that, so you can do things like roll out your sugar piece. And you can make like roses and petals and things like that. It's really good if you're doing decorative work. I have never once mastered that because I'm just not that good. So I stick to little sweets. But you can create some pretty things if you're really, really patient, and I'm not. But I did manage to master little snails and things like this, which I quite like making. If you're making it into sweets, make sure you cut it as quickly as possible, because it will harden up really quickly, and once it goes hard you can't do any more moulding with it. I've got a bowl of caster sugar which I'm putting the sweets into, and that way they'll be lightly dusted. You need to do this while it's still warm so the sugar sticks to them. Then you'll end up with actual parsley sweets. Okay, so that's the finished result. Got these lovely little lemon drops. If I'm being perfectly honest, I would probably add a little bit of citric acid to them, or some lemon juice next time I make these, because although they've got a lemon flavour, there's not very much tartness. So if you like a really tart lemon drop, I would add that to it. But otherwise, I think they've come out quite well. So I just want to show you, you might have heard it on the video, but I burnt myself already on that sugar. It is that easy to do it. It just needs to spit ever so slightly. So be really careful when you're making these at home. And don't let, if you are doing it with your children, don't let them anywhere near it until at least it's cool enough to touch, because it does spit and it's not the safest sweet to make because of the temperatures that you're working with. Having said that, it is so much fun and I do really recommend it. And once you feel quite comfortable working with sugar in the different temperatures, have a go at it, because the first couple of times you do it, I guarantee it'll be a total disaster, because it was when I did it, and my class members will tell you the same thing. But the more you do it, the more you kind of work out how to do the pulling and the turning, and you know how long to leave it before it starts to cool too much that you can't work with it anymore. And I don't know, I kind of like the chemistry of it. It really makes me smile. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to me again this week. I hope you have a lovely bank holiday weekend. I hope the sunshine carries on as it has done today, and I will see you next week.